feel free to start us off.
Hey, what's going on? We are back with another episode of Eclectic Soundtrax podcast, and we're here with Joe Ferland from Toronto-based group Danceland. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Toronto.
Yeah.
Where are you now? So you. Oh, bye, Vic. No, whatever. You came up. Are you from Toronto? Or are you from New York? Where are you from?
I grew up mostly in New Jersey.
Okay,
right outside New York.
Is that where you're from?
Yeah, basically. I mean, my family moved around a bunch before like second grade, but we ended up in Jersey. So,
gotcha.
Grew up there. Yeah, I spent a lot of time in New York, obviously, but yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So when you were younger, you were doing, I guess it was like the 80s or 90s, I guess the 90s, right? You were kind of playing like rock, punk rock kind of type bands around.
Yeah, we had like a kind of like a punk power trash band. We kind of thought we were kind of a cross between like the Who, the Jam, and the Replacements, something like that. But did that for a while, and then kind of moved on to a more straight up rock trio, and we did a bit more jamming in that band, and I started getting back into the jams, because when we were doing the punk pop thing, I rarely would like
guitar
go off and do stuff.
Right. What was hip in New York at that time? I mean, I was back. CBGB was still there. Was there? I'm imagine there's always something cool happening in New York. But what was the scene like? All right, where the fudge were we?
Talking about bands in New York, about the recording,
taking cabs to gigs.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to give us an official clap that's just the mark that we're back. Right. Okay. So tell us about what I want to do actually is talk about the album, like as kind of a rundown by song. Like, so as soon as I listen, the first track, Blue Water Sky, I love, and it just caught me immediately. And I was kind of thinking like, okay, kind of jam band, like expecting maybe kind of like a lot of like a long kind of noodly sort of stuff going on, but not every song. Like there are those moments of some jamming, passages, but this is just a great kind of Americana folky. I don't know how you would describe it, but it's just that I love the vocal harmonies, right? And I love just the arrangement of the music, the melodies. Some of the descriptions I read had some, I think, like sunny harmonies. I really liked that.
Yeah.
Right. And then the instrumentation and stuff. But yeah, so I kind of like to just run down the album and just tell us about the song. So what's the story behind Blue Water Sky?
Blue Water Sky is definitely our ode to Lake Huron. That area that we go to, that we live in up there, is called Blue Water, basically. And the lake is very shallow when it comes in at that point. So all the water's really blue. And it's an amazing spot, though. I mean, it's like I think when we were doing some research, we saw that the Lake Huron sunsets were like top 10 sunsets in the world, and they really are amazing and really inspiring. And one morning I came out to the kitchen table, picked up the guitar, and just started like with that guitar riff there, and it just popped out, man. And then I was looking for a chorus, because I like that that kind of shuffle beat that I have going there for the verses. Mm-hmm. But then when I kind of was thinking, let's do a little more rock for the chorus there. And I mean, I really like how it came together. The lyrics, Jale and I worked on the lyrics together. And when we got a place in Bayfield, I think it's 4 years ago now. And one of the first things we did was we got a Canadian flag made with a steal your face as the instead of a maple leaf.
Mhm.
And we hung it out because they had a flagpole out back on the hill, and we hung it out there, and we were like, okay, well, let's see, like, if people even like notice that it's not like,
Right.
a Canadian flag, it's a deadhead flag. But that's our, that's our fly our freak flag, like on there. But it's a great area, and it was really conducive to really kind of hunkering down and getting these songs out, and that's the one that's our Blue Water ode there.
Well, first of all, I that's awesome to just even know what that song is about, and I'm not sure. I imagine it was that lake because I feel like I was in that same kind of region. I don't know as far as whatever Great Lake we were on. I assume maybe it was that one. But what was interesting to me is, like, obviously I've been to various lakes in the U.S., but the feeling of that, it was like a coast. It felt like an ocean.
Yeah.
And people,
Right.
they were at the beach. It felt like more like an ocean than a lake, right? Which, it's still massive and everything, but it was super cool. I was like, man, this is love. It felt like being at the beach. It was gorgeous.
Yeah, well, interestingly enough, I mean, the reason why we started going to that region was we got tickets to go see Dead & Company in Detroit, and my wife was like, well, let's why don't we just spend a week on Lake Huron, and the day of the show we'll go over to Detroit and we'll come back. And we hadn't spent much time like in what they call cottage country up here. We didn't really have many friends that had places, and so we didn't get out that much. But she had been, being from Windsor, she had been to that area quite a bit, and she suggested that we go stay the week there. So when we rented a house right on the lake and went down to the beach, and I was like,
right,
like you, I was like, it's like the beach, like I grew up in Jersey, like with the shore, and I'm like, this is what it reminds me of. It's like really crazy that in Ontario you have like this, there's certainly beaches, man-made beaches in Toronto around Lake Ontario, but nothing like an actual strip of beach that just goes on for forever. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, really cool, man. I'm gonna I lied. I'm not gonna go in order. I'm gonna jump around. I'm gonna jump to 420. I think I have a pretty good sense of what this song might be about. But now it's legal in Canada, right?
Yep.
Okay, so back to so we're gonna talk about 420. What's the story on that one? But the album itself, Pink Lem, like you guys grew a strand of cannabis called Pink Lemonade, apparently, right? Is that
correct?
And that's where the title came from.
Yeah.
So
it's
as deadheads. I mean, I'm looking at you like, look at this long-haired hippie and all of his cannabis habits. I mean, are you guys advocates for that? Just casual?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. I mean, it was the first time we ever grew, and I think we started last March of 21. And it was quite a process. I think Jale really kind of, was looking after the plants, like, every day basically. And we got out of 8 plants, we harvested like 5. 3 of them had mold and whatnot. But the Pink Lemonade came out so good. It was unbelievable. And we were thinking about, names for the album, and we're like, how about Pink Lemonade? And we're like, nah, it doesn't. And then like a week later, we're like, all right, why don't we roll some of that Pink Lem? And then we were like, Pink Lem, that's much better.
Yeah, because I was like, why is it cut? Like, why Pink Lem? But it does have a flow to it. Yeah, it's kind of nice. And I love the art. Who did the artwork, man? The artwork definitely brings in the psychedelic element, right? Like if you get elements in the music for sure, but then that artwork, I think of the old, some old acid trip Beatles video or something. I don't know. So who did that?
Our friend Simon Paul, he does a bunch of indie bands in Toronto, and he's a fantastic artist. And I've known him for a while, so I was like, hey man, like give me some ideas. And he showed over the first couple things, and we're like, oh wow, that's really great. And then we kind of made a couple adjustments, and we're like, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I love the colors as well. So back
Yeah,
to
right.
so the song 420. Okay, so is there a specific
Yeah.
is that a
So
song with a message kind of thing?
yeah, so I had music worked out kind of for the tune, and we took a really cool trip to Drag Lake in Ontario to see friends of ours, and it was the first kind of first meeting of people that we had outside our bubble during the pandemics, and we hadn't seen them in a long time, and they're very close friends of ours. So the kind of story is written around there, and I was trying to figure out a chorus, and literally I was in again at the kitchen table playing the tune. I looked at the clock, it said 420, and I'm like, well, that's got to be it, because it's like, and then like I was working through the lyrics. I was like, I wanted to sound inclusive, right? I wanted to like the whole story around 420 is a bunch of kids getting together after school trying to find a field of I think it was weed that someone grew that got nicked, and it's just out there, and they're trying to find this field. So every day after school at 420 they get together and pass joints. And for me, when I started smoking weed, I mean, it was like a communal thing. It was like 5, 6, 7 people in a circle, passing a joint. So I kind of wanted to get that feeling in there, like, if you want to join us, come with us. If if you don't want to join us, just go on your way. That's cool. You don't have to. Yeah. But it really was that, and I'm really happy that I actually have a song out there that is cannabis friendly. So
Yeah, that's great. It makes me think of something way back. So my brother and I, he's out in San Francisco these days, but for a long time we played music together and wrote stuff and started my band again. I'd say my band, but we started it with some friends way back, and he used to be in this band called Hostile Groove out in Los Angeles, and they were a metal band, and they were big advocates for weed. So I just remember this was back in the CD days, right?
Yeah.
Kind of about right on the cusp, like the digital world was starting to happen. The internet was a thing, obviously, but CDs were still very much a thing. And so, you had this back in the days of the hidden tracks and trying to do. And so they had this song they actually had this brilliant shirt called Joint Man. And it's a character of joint, his head smoking, and he's got his arms up or whatever. And it says, he's got like the Converse shoes on, and it says it's always 420 somewhere in the world. So that was the hook of their song, the song 420. But they did this thing where they like wanted to, my brother was telling me like what a nightmare it was, because they wanted the track right at 420. It was such a pain in the ass to like the perfect thing. But I always think of that, man. But yeah, no, I think we've had a Space Camp as a group. Well, they're kind of spread out. One of the guys is in Pennsylvania, big advocates for marijuana. A friend of ours with friends of ours at Yay Plus, Justin Bridges, who we had on he's a huge advocate. Like, I think you guys would get along. He's up in Syracuse, man. So he's
nice.
Right down the road from you, and they're talking about having some kind of festival up there at some point, which I would love to get up there and play. And if they end up putting something together, I usually have, or a lot of things that he does is very much based in activism for marijuana.
Oh, that's cool.
So, yeah, man.
Very
if
cool.
Like that happens, I'll let you guys know. It seems like
that'd be amazing. Yeah,
great fit with his vibe.
Yeah.
Anyway, so now back to track 2. Don't Act Surprised. Obviously, like, this is a very personal song for you. This is a song that was about your mother, departure from your father, and you and your brother, and then how it affected you, right? So tell us a little bit.
I mean, it's really about my mother's first marriage. So my mother was married to a guy from Toronto. So my brother and sister were born in Ontario.
Really?
And then she left her first husband when my sister was 3 years old. My brother was 3 weeks old. And this was this was years ago. I mean, this was like the mid 50s, man. And it's like, to do that at 22 years old, like, going and leaving the country, going back to her family's place in New England. I mean, I got some of the stories here and there. And interestingly enough, like, as the years went on, my dad was a salesman, my father. was a salesman. So my father is not my sister and brother's father. So he was a salesman. He's up in Toronto. He sees, construction company with this guy's name on it. And I imagine he talked to my mother about it, but he eventually, told my sister, if you want to find your biological father, I think this is the guy, and here's a number that you can call and I can contact him. So she did. She reconnected, with him, and then I started hearing stories on that side, like he was really surprised that, he was devastated, and he didn't see it coming, and I was like, wow, that's really weird. Like, how is that even possible? Like, if my mother's in this state, like as she was talking about, how does he not know that something is amiss? Because it took him, I guess. It was a sledgehammer for him, that they had left the morning, he went to work and then they left. And I just couldn't, I not being inside the story, it was tough for me to kind of prod people about, hey, so what really happened here? But from what I heard my mother saying, I have to believe that, there was some kind of postpartum depression or something, because and those things weren't dealt with back then. And I'm sure she just thought, wow, I just feel horrible. I got to get out of here, and not really knowing what was up,
Yeah, that's a good point. That it's kind of the world of not now. It's almost like the extreme opposite. Like everyone's
right.
Dominate everything, and back then it was like no feelings.
Yeah, right.
And don't talk about it. But
right.
So all the counseling and all those options probably were not.
No, yeah,
thing and all that. So yeah, you're that is interesting. I don't want to speak too personally about any of my own family stuff, but I there's I'm sort of a generation separated from a similar situation of just sort of a very bizarre sort of thing like that, where we never got answers or understood what
right
was,
Yeah, and then after like going through the song and writing it, like I was trying to have Jale help me. I'm like, Jale, come on, can you help me write? She's like, dude, it's your story, man. Like, how am I going to help? And then I started writing the song, and I was like getting to the end. I'm like, you know what? I mean, in the big picture, it's just a breakup story. There's nothing, earth shattering to the people involved, but nothing like, out of, what happens every day, people fall out and it just happens,
What's great about those kind of songs is, and being an artist that, writes a song like that and puts that, when you put that out there and you are vulnerable and it's so personal, like, and it's difficult for the artist. But what I think is so great about something like that is, regardless of where it's coming from for you, the person who wrote it, it's like, that's gonna, for people who listen to that, it impacts everybody different and they can relate. That's one beautiful thing I think about songs in general, right? Is everyone's gonna sort of personalize something, and it can impact so many people in different ways, even if it's something that's not relatable to you personally at all, that the song is still very meaningful, across a wide spectrum. So it's great to put that kind of stuff out there, because I think it can be a healing mechanism for many people potentially.
Yeah, and especially for like the person writing it, I mean, writing a tune like that, I remember when you get it complete, the first like handful of times trying to get through it, like I would get choked up, and I couldn't get through it. And I was like, well, that's good. I mean, if it's hitting me that way, I'm that's good. It might not hit everyone that way. And, people don't know exactly the story. And, and for me, it's like, my sister has since passed as well. So, writing about my mother and my sister, and they're both gone, it's like, it brings back like, all those feelings of loss and, trying to put things together, and, the kind of emotional, like, shit that they had to go through dealing with this for their whole lives, I heard about it, but man, to have to live through that and, try to make sense of it, and you're like directly involved in it. It's, till later in my life, do I ever realize like how tumultuous it must have been for everyone,
A potentially related question. the just being in a punk rock band, was that, I mean, that's gonna, you're gonna have your angst, teen, early 20, whatever, you're gonna have that, probably, everyone has that rebellious sort of aspect of your life, but do you feel like that aspect of your life and that sort of past and not knowing, did that sort of fuel a desire in any way to sort of play music, and in particular like sort of in a punk rock style, or not necessarily a connection?
Yeah, I mean, not really. I mean, I'm not sure if it was like an angst thing or just like I was just really into that type of music, and I wrote some personal stuff back then too, and I don't know, it's just a different arena to work in. It's a more, like you say, like angst ridden kind of almost headbanging, getting the shit
like
out,
a
right?
different way, right? I mean, punk rock, no time for sensitivity. You're basically, I'm fucking pissed, and it's like, yeah, me too. We don't have time to cry. We're just pissed about everything.
Right.
Yeah, I love it all, man. I think that's the beauty of being a musician and growing and meeting other musicians and discovering music and learning. I mean, I'm big on all this stuff, and to me, it's just, I still get excited about all kinds of new things I hear, and you're not, no one are really reinventing the wheel or anything, but it's just like, it's so magical how 3 chords and a melody can be so powerful,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've seen any of the McCartney and Rick Rubin video footage.
No, I haven't.
So like they talk about songwriting, and Paul just sits down at the piano and he just starts making up songs. Like I mean, it's just crazy. The dude is just insane. But that's like, that should give all of us, like, there's a beacon out there, like, this guy is sitting down at an instrument and just making up songs, and he's like 80.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is just the fearlessness of it. You just go in, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but like anything,
absolutely,
you gotta start. And I think as an artist though, and I think this goes for a lot of artists, is like, there is that muse, right? And I don't want to sound, too artsy fartsy about it, but it's not quite the same as a clock in, clock out type of job, right? I mean,
right.
It is in the business side of things. It is in the gigging side of things. There, you got to be at places and do stuff. But in terms of the creative flow, at least for myself, it's like, there are those moments when it's just happening. I mean, maybe some limbs in your system, and it's just, you're just going. And there's other times where you're not vibing. And I think when you're able to roll in with the moment when it's happening, that's very, like, it's exciting, and you kind of sometimes know when you're onto something and it's going.
Absolutely.
You're like, nah, it's just forced, or it isn't, and I don't feel like it should ever be forced, so you got to
agree.
You got to let it be organic, in my opinion, in my experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and being through the songwriting process, tons of times, like I don't get crazy now when I sit down. Okay, I've got some ideas. Let me try to work them out. And it's like, this doesn't sound right. It's not happening. I can't, and it's like, but I know that it's, it's going to come, and I'm going to find the right thing. And even if I don't find the right thing on this tune, it'll bring another tune to my head that something will work eventually. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure, man. Danceland Road. Let's talk about this one.
So there's a highway 21. It's called Blue Water Highway, and off of Blue Water Highway, we would drive on it all the time, going up and down the coast. And Danceland Road, we'd pass Danceland Road, we'd always say, that's a great name for like a song, or that's a great name for like an album, And I had this melody in my head that I thought it'd be great for an instrumental, and I worked it out. And then I kind of sat down with it one day, and I immediately came up with the riff that starts off the tune. And I had in my head the whole time, this is called Danceland Road. It's
cool
just
riff, by the way, it's a really cool riff. I actually was counting it and think, hold on, I'm gonna play this real quick because I don't want to like think I'm thinking of the wrong song. Hold on. Play. Yeah, dude, dude, this riff is badass. Like I was like, at first I was like, is that like 5/4 or something? And I was counting. I think you just put an accent on the and or something.
Yeah, it's almost like the riff starts at the pickup.
Yes,
you know,
it's a really cool. I love this riff, man. This song is so in the organ and everything. It's really really cool. Sorry to interrupt you, but
that's cool.
When you mentioned them.
Yeah, and you know, it came out so good. Like we recorded it just bass drums and guitar, and then I overdubbed the guitar, and then the bass player came in and he redid his bass, and then we wanted some organ on there. And I sent it to our keyboard player, and our drummer is also like, he does a bunch of other stuff. He did all the lyric videos for us.
I was going to ask about that. Awesome.
He did all the lyric videos for us, and he went to the keyboard. The keyboard player came to his house, and they did the remote recording. But if you listen to the second time the riff comes around, the organ is doing this crazy like counterpoint to the riff. Mm-hmm. And the drummer was just like, okay, do something here that's going to sound evil. And he just did it, you know, and it just came out so great, I thought, you know.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was saying earlier, man. And I think you talked about it in an interview, and it's so cool because you kind of establish a vibe, and then this, I don't know, it all fits together, but I was like immediately like, oh, nice. Like you really hear that rock element, you know, and it almost even a progressive vibe. And, you know, the word, you know, the psychedelic I see, but like, I almost like with the jam factor, to me, it's like, it seems, and I'm not like a huge Deadhead guy, just don't know a whole lot of Grateful Dead stuff. So you know a lot more of their catalog and kind of different things they did than I do. But yeah, I feel like a lot of these are much more polished. They don't feel like it's like, and we're just kind of like winging it. You know, it's like these sound like there was thought put into the arrangements and the
absolutely,
everything going on for sure.
Yeah, and you know, I was listening to one of the local bands. They released an album. I think it was in late 2020. And I was hearing some of the guitar stuff, and I was like, wow, that's really doing it for me. And the second lead I do, it's all like kind of distorted. And I was like, it was directly an inspiration from like, you know, a friend's band's like, you know, album. And I was really happy like that I could actually kind of capture what I wanted to do there too, you know, and just like how it came together with the mixing, and you know, and it's just 4 instruments really. It's not like, you know, there's not a lot of other things going on there like instrumentation. So it came out really good.
What are some other influences that you have going on there?
We listened, my wife and I listened to a lot of Zappa, which comes out a little bit. Yeah. I love the Dead. I listen to the Dead a ton. I listen to Garcia Band a lot too. I feel like Garcia Band is kind of Garcia doing covers. Yeah, he does originals when he does Garcia Band, but he does a bunch of covers, and I love the the selections he makes. And we've been listening to a lot of bands, and we were just at over the weekend. It was the Big Rock Music Festival in Brantford, Ontario. Brantford is where Gretzky was born, and it's just outside of Brantford, and it was on this farm, and it was like two days of jam bands, and it was just great. And the local talent here is just amazing, and I'm really inspired by like the local scene, and it's been great getting into it because, you know, we put together this Dead cover band, and we're like, well, you know, if we do it well, we know we know people are going to like it because they're Deadheads, right? I mean, it's kind of like a built-in crowd. But like, you know, you start hanging out with the musicians in the scene and start going to see the original bands, and the original bands were fucking amazing. You know, it's a great scene, and kind of everyone kind of, you know, helps each other out. And like, you know, we play with a bunch of players in the scene. It's kind of like, you know, if someone needs a guitar player, there's someone that can fill in. If someone needs a keyboard player, there's, you know, so it's great. It's a great scene, and I'm really happy to be part of it in the original sense now too. So
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel the same. Like Austin is just got, it's just insane amount of talent here of all kinds of genres. It's impossible to even listen to it all.
Yeah.
One thing, just as a musician immersed in that sort of scene, and like, I know what you mean. There's a communal thing, and so you kind of sub for each other, and know who's going on what and who's available, and everyone's in a bunch of different bands.
Yeah.
But between that and just being like in a songwriting group here and all the different artists I've met here and then the podcast I was always like, yeah, I mean, I know a ton of musicians, and it's like we weren't like planning on having musicians necessarily exclusively, but that's our primary kind of guest, right? And I was like, there'll be no shortage, I'm sure. And then and all of a sudden we start getting referrals from like Prospect PR, and everything.
Right.
And I was like, oh, this is just fantastic, because these are all bands. Like there's these communities of just hundreds of bands in different cities and all this, right? Great bands, but you never really hear of them. You've got the top stuff that's been marketed that's giant and huge, and of course everybody knows this. And I love Metallica like the next guy and all the stuff that I grew up with, but
right,
we all know Metallica. I don't need to go talk about Metallica, you know what I mean? And talk about Metallica. But like what I like is like discovering all these new artists and telling other people like, oh, you got to check out this band. It might be someone from Austin and then someone like you, and I'm going like, oh, you need to check out this band called Beetroot Revival because they're this kind of cool Americana thing here,
right?
In your Blue Water Sky. Like I was like, man, it kind of has that vibe, and vice versa, like, so
yeah,
that to me is so in the modern world. Like there's so much, it's overwhelming, but at the same time, it's really awesome to discover so much independent music that you might not otherwise come across, which is really
cool. And like, just, being a Deadhead and being on like one of the platforms where you can put on like, let's say a Grateful Dead kind of bent playlist. Yeah. And then you hear stuff that like, that I'm not like Tedeschi Trucks Band. They have this song called Midnight in Harlem. That's just like, I'm like, I never heard the song before. I can't believe I have,
right.
It's like one of those things. I can't believe I haven't heard it before, but now I have, because like, it's out there and it's mixed into my like musical stuff,
Yeah, I teach music as well, and the same thing happens, particularly with adults. So I found a lot of kids nowadays are like sort of like, I just kind of listen to whatever, and I don't know, and I'm like, what do you like? Think of something, anything, Jesus Christ. But adults, they much more know, and then all of a sudden, guys are like, oh, there's this man. A recent one was Boggs. Oh Jesus, why can't I? Boz Scaggs, featuring Dwayne Allman, called Loan Me a Dime, this blues tune.
Really?
Minor blues. Amazing. This band called the Jayhawks. I'm like, they're just
yeah.
me, and I'm like, dude, this is killer. Never even heard of it.
Right, yeah.
So cool. And I always also see all these 6 degrees of separation, right? All the time with everything. Like bring this Jayhawks band. I'm thinking maybe it's this older band. I think it was more like maybe an 80s thing. Really, really great. Really love this song. And then I find out the drummer was like, I think I could be speaking here, but I think he was from this band called The Cows, who is connected to, now I'm losing my train of thought totally, but it was a very strange parallel of like some,
right.
I think it was someone that worked with like Kevin Root Manis or something. Yeah, Kevin Root Manis, who played with the Melvins, and
wow.
I would have never put that.
Yeah, right.
And I was like, what? The Cows?
Yeah.
Super cool though. You know what I mean? And there's so much of that if you dig a little bit. You hear.
Yeah, right.
Fascinating. And now with Wikipedia, it's great too, because you can kind of just go poke around and
Yeah, you remember the old school band trees where they'd have like like Cream and like Blind Faith, and like they'd all go down to like
yeah. Blind Faith, like this has nothing to do with Blind Melon.
No, exactly.
I know we're blinded, but I do remember listening to one of your songs and even going like, oh, I almost feel a little Blind Melon on that, And I don't have a big Blind Melon catalog in my head. I don't think they had too many albums before what's his name, Shannon Hoon passed, but yeah, I don't know, man. I love when I'm listening to things, and as a musician, I wonder if you're like this too. I imagine you have to be like. I'm always like, if we're writing or creating, it's like, oh yeah, and then that Melvinsy thing, and then that Faith No More,
yeah,
and then that,
of course.
Yeah, it's like, and so you're pulling from all these resources and influences, and the point is, obviously, is they all kind of meld into your own thing, and so I love that when I'm listening to other people's music too, and again, back to the lyrical content of a song, right? Like I might hear influences in a song, or it might hit me because of something I've heard, where I'm like, I'm making that connection in my brain, but it might not even be something you as the writer even have heard. And I kind of think that's cool. Like if someone comes to me and goes like, oh man, this reminded me of so and so, or your guitar player, and I'm like, wow, I don't even really listen to that band.
Yeah, right.
Maybe that guitar player influenced someone that did influence me, or kind of connected, you know.
Yeah, I get that a lot too. Like you know, people mention like, you know, jam bands that I've never heard of, or like, you know, like Americana bands that like I don't know, and they're like, yeah, you guys sound like the, like someone said that like I sent a couple songs to them, they're like, oh, it sounds like the Jayhawks. I'm like,
that's hilarious. The Jayhawks.
I know. I'm like, I know, and I'm like, oh really? Like you know, don't really listen to them exclusively, so you know.
I like that though, because then if everyone came up to you and was like, said the exact same thing, you'd be like, maybe I need to like try to expand my horizons a bit. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
When you're getting like, sometimes I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, this totally sounds like this. You know, I might be thinking like a Mike Patton, and someone else is like, I've got a few things I've done where I kind of go the look, but then they're like, oh, that's like a Tom Waits vibe, and I'm like, cool, you know?
Yeah, right, exactly.
So, you know, like, yeah, I mean, I love the way that works. Okay, moving on to Protection Mantra.
Okay,
this is like, I don't know why this. I want to be like, it's just a political song. No, this is like yoga, right? What's up with this?
No, yeah. So, so my wife and I had been doing Kundalini yoga probably for about 5 years now, and there's these playlists that we were listening to, and they're these mantras, but they're done like these guys do, and you know, women and whoever do albums, and they put original tunes to mantras, and some of them are amazing, you know, and we were listening to them, and you know, it just, I had this music and I thought it was going to be an instrumental, and then I was like, you know what, this would probably be good paired with one of these mantras, and we picked one out, and we were on the beach in I think it's a place called the Pinery.
Now
it's just,
when you say beach, we're talking Canadian beach, right? Okay.
Yeah, it's Canadian beach. Yeah, Lake Beach.
Lake beachfront property.
Yeah. So we were on the beach, and we started working on it, and it fit perfectly, the mantra, the melody, and then we started working on it in the studio, and we're like, well, let's and it was just the two of us doing vocals. We're like, let's just add as much as, you know, we think necessary, and then whatever Gregg wants to use in the mix, it's fine. And then we get the mix back, and the first line is just Jale, and then the whole, like, I think every track we did is up there, you know, and it's like, and I was like, wow, that sounds really cool with all the vocals like that. I mean, it really made it kind of what, you know, more than what we expected, but it kind of fit what we were doing like a glove. It was great. Yeah.
This made me think of several things, but it brought up Beatles back in terms of, well, not Beatles, but we're talking about McCartney. Lennon, I don't know why the word mantra just made me think of Mind Games, which, God, I love that song. That's such a beautiful song. I really, really love, obviously the Beatles, but also John Lennon's solo stuff.
Yeah.
So great. And then I started thinking, when you all the voices and everything, especially with the mantra, sort of that whole like instant karma. Wait, is it instant karma? No, it's the Christmas thing that John Lennon did. Right. And with all the voices and the kind of,
right.
I don't know what it's communal, I guess, in that sense. I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it
gives it that feeling, right?
Yeah, and the protection mantra is really, it's the invoking of the protective, you know, qualities of the universe, and yeah, I mean, it came out great, and so kind of cool story. So at the studio, the guy that runs the studio, my friend Brad, he has this 12-string. And this 12-string is the 12-string that Alex Lifeson played on the Snakes and Arrows tour.
Wow.
And the headstock broke, and they fixed it during the tour, and he played it for the rest of the tour. But then at the end of the tour, the roadie was getting rid of it, and he had it like up for bids or something like that. My friend bid on it, and he had it. So that's the 12-string that's on the tune is Alex Lifeson's whole 12-string. So that's pretty cool.
that automatically brings extra magic.
Yeah.
And especially from a Canadian standpoint, I mean, like,
Yeah.
Rush, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
huge. One last thought on this one. I kind of want to. I know there's all these different types of yoga, and this made me think of Jester King Brewery, Vic.
The goat yoga.
Goat. So I did a thing with my fiance called Doom Metal Goat Yoga, and it was amazing. And because there's something about the low frequency of there's something they have this just low, constant kind of and almost
right.
didgeridoo quality. And then you're doing stuff, and all of a sudden there's a goat on your back, and there's just goats around all over the place. And I don't know what it is about it, who thought of it, but I was like, this is the shit. Doom Metal Goat Yoga. Go try it.
Yeah, Kundalini yoga is great. It's really cool. It's a lot of good stretching, and yeah, I mean it takes a bit to get into, but it's pretty cool.
I remember being a kid, my mom would always be like, I've never been a morning person. I hate it. I'm a night guy. I'm a musician.
Yeah.
And I wake up, I was like I had a record for most tardies at school or some shit. And I'd head to the world for the first half, and then like an absolute off the wall animal the second half of the day. But I would always just be like rolling out of bed at the absolute last minute, just like and she's like, just splash some cold water on your face and stretch. And I'm like, fucking stretch? What are you talking about? And now it's like, yeah, you get out of here. It's like it's loosened up, man. Like yoga is definitely one of those things. Like, why yoga? It's like, give yourself a few years, you'll fucking know why yoga. Like, you know.
Yeah, my strength challenge is see if you can put your socks on standing up without holding on anything.
There is a Louis C.K. comedy bit about putting his socks on, which is the funniest. He's like, this is the worst moment in my life or my whole day. He's like putting my socks on. He's like, I'm like a 8-year-old kid rolling back on the bed. Like
yeah.
I can relate 100%. Like putting socks on, I'm just like, like you're right. It's
so I try to put my socks on standing up. That's my challenge to see if I'm limber that day.
Vic and I are both going to try this later, by the way. I know it. And then I'm going to text Vic and say, Vic, I fell and hurt myself. God damn it. Why did I
I'm going to laugh.
Go furlong. And then Vic will laugh and be like, you're an idiot. Start working out. Go get yourself a goat and some doom metal records. Okay, Down on Me. What's up with this one?
That's another extension of my mother's story, really, but that really touches on kind of the mental health and kind of, like I said, the tumultuous time it must have been for them involved. Yeah, I mean, it's and it's weird. It's like, my mother and I had some odd times when I was young, and sometimes I felt like, I kind of had to like let her, rest her weary soul down on me, because sometimes, she didn't have anyone to lean on really. And, my dad was on the road a lot, and, you could see there's residual pain from any kind of thing like that. And as a young kid trying to figure it all out, young teenager, probably, like 15, 16, like that, maybe I have to help this situation too. Cause, I remember when I was, 20 years old, like we would just go at it, but like leading up to that, I mean, I think she leaned on me a little bit,
Yeah, I know I was definitely a bastard of a teenager. My poor mother.
I was horrible. I really was. I was terrible.
Hey, when did you? I don't think we asked this. Like, when did you actually start playing guitar? Was that your first instrument? Like, when did you start?
Yeah. So when I was in 5th grade, our music teacher where I went to school started having after school guitar lessons, and there was like a handful of kids that did that, and it went through 5th grade and 6th grade. And then 7th grade, I started taking formal lessons. And then I think I did that for about a year and a half. I think I got peer pressured into quitting that from some friends that were more jock oriented. But I still played. And then, I never joined bands until I was away at college. But when I started again at toward the end of high school, I started taking lessons again, and I started taking lessons from this really cool hippie guy who lived up in New York State, and he used to teach at Ramapo College, which is total hippie college. And he would come, give me lessons, and and like every once in a while, he'd be like, "So, do you want to smoke a joint?" I'd be like, "My mother's like in the other." He's like, "Don't worry about her. She's smoking cigarettes. She won't even know. We'll just open the window." And be like, "Oh, okay." And it was kind of like one of those things. Like every time he'd come, he'd have some other kind of thing like for us to do, and I'd be like, the one time he came, he started holding his stomach. He's like, I'm like, "Are you okay?" He's like, "Oh, I just did a peyote button, and it's kind of like, making my stomach." I'm like, oh, okay,
You were getting
so
yeah.
Yeah. But it was, but he taught me how to play guitar, the way kind of it morphed into me playing now. So, and it's weird. He lives in London, Ontario.
Okay.
Like, so I was looking for him, like, years later, looking for this guy, and he moved to Canada. So
sounds like the hip thing to do.
Yeah, right.
US is like, all right, when you guys get your shit together again, we'll talk. Like, I'm gonna head to Canada for a bit here.
Yeah, there's a place for you here, Skunk.
Yeah, I'll be there.
And you too, Vic.
Close to the end of the tour, so I think I'll just stay. Be like, bye guys, I'm gonna stay in Canada.
Yeah, right.
I'll just get on some Pink Lem. I won't know what's going on anyway. Earlier I was like, what was it really 4:20 when you looked at that clock? Or were you just
yes? Well, I'm telling you, it was. And that's why I was like, I have to incorporate that into the chorus, and it just fit perfectly too. So,
were you same kind of influences? I mean, we did come well. So, what were you learning, like with your guitar teacher? Like, what kind of stuff?
We were doing like "Hang Down Your Head," Tom Dooley.
Wow!
Amazing Grace. All the really easy, slow kind of tunes that kids can kind of play.
I think I had that book. I
know. Michael, Row Your Boat Ashore. I think that was one of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I know all those tunes. What's interesting on guitar teachers, real quick. So I was fortunate, I guess. Like it was kind of bizarre, like in hindsight, because I've been a music teacher now for years and years, and of course I'm friends with tons of students and their families. You bond with people, and people that I taught when they were teenagers that are now 30 years old, and you're friends. We stay in touch or whatever, and I have respect for them and everything. And some people come and go, but there are those lasting relationships, and I think you just music is a bonding thing.
Yeah,
it either happens or it doesn't. And sometimes it's very immediate. And for me, it's like, the age doesn't even matter. If I see a 7-year-old kid that's got it and is really into it, I'm just like, dude, let's do this. This is awesome.
Yeah. Right.
And, but what's interesting, I always think about this in hindsight, like now being a teacher, and just like the, like boundaries, like when I started playing guitar and I was like 14, my teacher was awesome. Like he taught at this place called Tip Top Music. And the guy there was this kind of this country dude, like, but this dude was a metal rock guy, and I was totally like, that was me, right at that moment. Like I just got into like Guns N' Roses and Metallica,
right?
Yeah, well, fucking rock guitar, And he was like, killing it on Randy Rhoads solos and stuff. So it was like awesome. And so I hit the ground running. But what was funny is like I'm like 14, I just started hanging out with this dude and his roommate. There was like a segue connector of the cool mysterious guy that all the girls and we all loved it at school with the long hair and the coat, and he was like that kind of guy.
Yeah,
and he was friends with my guitar teacher, and he had like a cool what was the fucking car George Costanza got in Seinfeld, John Voight's car, the LeBaron convertible.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The entire back seat was speaker cabs, and we would drive to my guitar teacher's house, and I'd be sitting on top of speaker cabs, fucking convertible, flying down the highway like blaring Judas Priest Painkiller, Ozzy No More Tears or something. And but I look back and I'm like, how weird is this that a 14-year-old kid is hanging out with his guitar teacher? And like the first time I ever got drunk was with my guitar teacher. I used to go to bars all the time with him when I was 14. Somehow I was like, it was kind of amazing, but also like, if I was a parent, I'd be like, that's fucking weird, dude. Like,
yeah, that doesn't happen these days, eh?
Right, exactly. It didn't seem weird though. But you're right. Now I look at that and I'm like, ugh, I would never like do that because it just seems kind of bizarre and inappropriate.
Yeah.
But whatever.
Yeah, I remember, going to college, and one of my, I think it was the, what is it? One of the philosophy professors. He knew I played guitar. He invited me to come over and jam. I was like, all right, I'll come over and jam. That probably doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, man. There's a lot of I think it's like there's always been a dark side. There always will be a dark side. But I think I would like to be even as a cynical person by nature in some aspects, like based on my upbringing. Like there is a lot of optimism, and I think that most people are inherently good. We're all human.
Yeah.
Flawed. We all make mistakes and do terrible things.
Agree.
Most of us don't do horrible, terrible, heinous things.
Yeah.
Especially consistently. And I think it's unfortunate now that we live in a time where that stuff is always at the forefront, and everyone's got to walk on eggshells and be cautious, which, you should, but golly, you think back, I just saw something about this, and there's, a lot of memes and stuff about it, but I don't know if it's a documentary or what, but, growing up in like the 80s and stuff. I mean, rode our fucking bikes around, you after school, you rode your bike somewhere with no goddamn helmet. And I'm not advocating for not wearing a helmet.
Yeah.
Like you could, wear a helmet, but and then you're wherever the hell, and you're doing whatever, and then you come home when it gets dark. And I mean, we knew, like, there was the whole thing, like, don't take candy from strangers and all that.
Yeah, right.
But you just didn't feel so afraid,
Yeah, and everyone's trying to protect you all the time, like from everything. Like, yeah, I agree. I mean, we used to I remember we used to go play basketball every day after school until it was dark, and then go home. We didn't have any you got to be home by and even as young teenagers, even if mom said you had to be home by, we're like, yeah, whatever.
Parental supervision did not exist. Me and my brother had this game. I mean, I think back to the stuff. I mean, you're jumping off roofs.
Yeah, right.
This game where, like, this is so gross. One of us would get in this trash can, like not metal, but we had this big plastic trash. Sit on the curb, and it's just so disgusting to think about. This was you created your own fun, right? You created your fun. One of us would get in the trash can. We'd put the lid on, and the other guy would go, across the yard, get a running start, and just kick the shit out of the trash can, and it would go flying into the street. And we just thought it was the funnest thing in the world. This thing, and all of a sudden you're like launched, into the street. And I'm like, this is just, can you imagine nowadays? Anyway, let's get to the last song, Not Without a Fight. We're saving the protest song for the end.
Yeah.
So tell us about this one.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was writing tunes, and a bunch of stuff was happening at the time. I mean, the Breonna Taylor thing had happened, the George Floyd thing had just happened, and up here in Canada, like the residential schools that had taken in Indigenous kids and done horrible things. There's mass grave sites all over Canada. And it was just kind of building up, and I just had an idea for a song, and Jale and I banged out the lyrics as best we could, and we spent a lot of time on the lyrics, and even while cutting vocals, we were still making sure that what we wanted to say was what we wanted to say. And I don't know, I think I had an interview a couple weeks ago, and someone asked me, well, jam bands don't really do protest songs, but I'm like, yeah, I understand that, but it doesn't mean that every jam band won't do a protest song. I mean, if it's top of mind for me, I mean, I'm gonna write about it. And I really felt like it's an important song for me and Jale, just because it was just these horrible feelings building up. And as a guy that growing up in the New York area, you get a good liberal outlook on things. And where I grew up in Jersey, it was lily white, man. But when I started going to the city, it was like, okay, well, this is how life really looks, outside of a white suburban town. And you get exposed to different things, and then you start learning about things. I mean, when I went to school, I don't know if it was like this for you guys, but there was no highlighting the horribleness of the start of our country, the US or Canada, and all that. I mean, I think it was, sometimes glorified, sometimes swept under the rug. And someone, I've, not that I've been an activist, but certainly been lobbying for, people doing the right thing to other people. And, I just had something to say and wanted to say it,
Yeah. My thought on that is, yeah, and you're so right. I mean, it was like, some of the guys you study about and are on your currency even, right? Or you're looking
right
at heroes and you're like, God, oof, they did some horrible things. I mean, like Andrew Jackson was pretty brutal, and more or less a genocide in a sense in this country, and but I look at it like, one thing I'm not into is complete and total cancel culture, because it's important, like you said. I mean, we need to learn history correctly. We need to learn it from, I think it's important to look at it from the perspectives of, everybody.
Yeah.
And then you sort of make an assessment, and which is going to be kind of logical in a lot of cases, like, well, this was not right. That
right. Exactly.
It handled better. Oh, wow, this guy did some really great things. I mean, some people are just cast into, the villain category, and you go back and you actually go, well, Richard Nixon actually did some positive things for Native Americans. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of good and bad in different guys, and some more than the other. But I think it's important to really try to get the truth, whatever that is, out to whoever. That's responsibility of a freaking teacher, man. Education through the through the ages is always spun, unfortunately, and there's
agree
and stuff, and I it seems like there's been a very big shift in that, because it is different, and I think these things need to be brought to light 100%, but also, like, let's not pretend, let's not try to rewrite anything, because we need to know.
Right.
We need to know. And that's the only thing I ever kind of fear in that realm, is the idea of, like, let's not talk about it, let's take it away because it was bad. No, that's exactly why we should.
Yeah, you want to highlight things that happened so that they don't happen again. Yeah.
It's in but yeah, it is interesting. I feel kind of lucky, man. I was, predominantly white, obviously, sort of neighborhood and everything, relatively small town, not like a small town, but somewhere in between a town and a city. But there were, I was friends with, all kinds of people. We had a lot of, black kids and stuff. The interesting thing was, like, it was a little more taboo in terms of the interracial dating and stuff. I remember being
right.
But I didn't, fortunately for me, like, overall, I felt pretty good, so I can say from my own personal experience, where I was in kind of somewhat thought of white bread America, it was pretty reasonably integrated, and I think things as a whole have kept getting better and better. But back to the Floyd thing and all that, it's just like one fucking bad apple, man, just ruins everything. And when it happens consistently, you need to address it and look at it. But it's utopias don't exist. Nothing's ever going to be perfect, and I think it's our responsibility, just as human beings and citizens of our communities and countries, et cetera, to just do our best to put our thoughts out there and to try to that's I think that's the tragedy in the modern landscape, certainly in the United States. It's just we're pitted against each other. Everyone's so ready to go to battle. If you just sit down, and that's another thing I love about a podcast, actually, if you just sit down and talk to a person as one-on-one as a human being, you're going to find out you have way more common ground.
Yeah.
And you're not bad people.
Agree.
You may disagree, and there's no reason to hate people because you have disagreement. I'm not talking about, like, absurd race, if someone's racist or a Nazi, like, that's ridiculous. But, rational thinking human beings, different thought process on how to get somewhere, and party and all that. But really, we're not that much different. And I wish that was a message that was put out there more. And I think it's a message that desperately needs to be received today. And I think a lot of problems that are happening in the world are because these the young kids especially, it's very confusing. It's just like, negativity, and you're supposed to hate everybody that disagrees with you. It's like, no, man, that's the complete opposite. Sit down.
I mean, that's what getting in a room and talking things out is supposed to be like. And it just doesn't seem like that happens at the political level any longer. It just seems like they just want to keep drifting apart from each other, which is, it's too bad, because I mean, there's so much good things that could come of people coming together. And like the things that
music, festivals, comedy.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
That's the greatest power an artist can have, you know.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, you know, when you're at like a music festival with a bunch of other people, you don't know, typically you don't care what they think about anything.
You're all a collective body enjoying the same thing.
Yeah.
At that moment. It's communal, and that's
and it
wonderful, you know.
Yeah, and if you can share that experience with somebody, why can't you share, like, you know, just being nice to each other? You know,
I think that's our Jerry Springer final thought. Jerry, what a horrible way to fuck Jerry Springer. That guy, oh man, rant time, shit.
No,
I think that might have started the whole
fucking
shit, man.
No,
that kind of stuff was like, I mean, it was funny, but
no, I think it's the beginning of the end. It really it destroyed common decency and respect for people. You know, you look at everything as blah blah blah. We're not going to talk about it, but yeah, I mean, we need to go the opposite of that, man. So, but I love your message, dude. I like your music's really cool.
Thank you.
You know, I like that you put your personal stuff out there. You have things to say, and some of it's just really cool and jammy and groovy. And I mean, I think it's a really nice body of work. And congrats on the new album.
Thanks a lot, man. Yeah, we're really happy. Thanks for having us on, having me on.
Yeah, man. So thank you so much, Joe, and our best to you. And oh gosh, I want to say Jole. Is that how you say it?
Jale.
Yeah. Continued success, man. I'll are you guys on tour this fall?
We've booked. It's been tough getting shows, but we booked one show in New York City for October 6th.
Oh, cool.
And we'll be looking to go into the States when we can. Definitely.
Cool. Well, I may hit you up, man, when I'm up that way in October.
All right.
You guys are up to, but once again, everybody, Joe Furlong. I'm messing up your name.
Ferland.
Jesus. Joe Furland.
Got
it. Joe Ferland from Danceland. Thanks for joining us, man. Once again, this has been Victor Ramos and Scott Manhattan from Eclectic Soundtrax podcast. Until next time, take care. Bye.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Hey folks, that concludes another episode of the podcast. Guest links will be available in the show notes. We'd like to thank our friends at Top Shelf Music for showcasing the podcast on their site. Be sure and check them out at topshelfmusicmag.com for the latest music news, reviews, and events. We'd also like to thank the folks over at Tragan Guitars, Godin Guitars, Ernie Ball Strings, and 5 Iron Woodworks. Have a great week and catch you on the next one.